Powerful stories, powerful sound. This is B360 Productions, where your voice takes center stage.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Baskis, and welcome to our first episode, Endeavor to Connect, from the Blind Endeavors Foundation. I'm the president and the founder of the organization, and this is our latest project, this podcast, that hopefully will go on indefinitely. I want to just say that this is a very personal episode, and I thought deeply about it for a long time, mainly about whether or not I should have someone interview me or this should be a monologue of me using my screen reader, which is what I will do today, to read the questions to me, and then I will answer them to the best of my ability. So, a screen reader, if you don't know, is a tool, like it's technology built into a computer system like this Apple Mac computer system that gives me the ability to navigate through the user interface, the graphical user interface. And I have a file that's open here that lists all the questions. And so I will go through them one at a time and try to answer them to the best of my ability. There's 16 of them. And so let's get started. Here's our first question.
1. Can you take us back to the moment when you first realized your life would be different due to blindness? What emotions did you experience? 1 of 16.
So I definitely can take you back to when I lost my sight and how I felt and the emotions that came. I was at Walter Reed when I really had this first idea that something was wrong. I had been serving on the ground in Iraq with the U.S. Army, and a bomb, a roadside bomb, an improvised explosive device, specifically a shape charge, detonated next to our vehicle, and it killed a good friend of mine, and I was wounded seriously, all over my body. But the question is about what was I thinking or feeling when I first awoke? And I would say I felt numb, delirious, kind of a huge fog, a brain fog, unclear because I was on a lot of medicine to prevent pain and to help me deal with some of my injuries. So I slowly was coming out of that induced coma, I guess. I don't know if that's technically what it was, but medicine was definitely doing its job in protecting me from pain and allowing me to sleep and rest. I really did feel lost, unsure of where I was and whether or not it was a dream. But as my brain kind of made sense of my surroundings, it was a hospital bed, and there were doctors and nurses coming in to tend to me, I realized immediately in those minutes, seconds, even hour, that something horrible had happened to me while I was on the ground in Iraq, in a combat zone. I think the emotions were numbed. I don't know how to explain it. I feel that I knew there were terrible things that happened, that took place, and to my body, to some people I served with, but I wasn't fully processing it. I was in shock. I guess is the best way to explain it. It's hard to remember everything. It's been nearly 17 years to this recording. Let's go to the next question.
2. When you first lost your sight, what were the things you immediately knew blindness would take from you? And looking back now, what are some things you didn't realize at the time, things that later made you think, I can't believe I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to do that anymore? 2 of 16.
It's an interesting question. I think some of the first things I thought about were, how am I going to serve in the military? I guess I'm not going to anymore. How am I going to drive and get myself around in a vehicle? I guess I'm not going to be able to drive anymore. I thought about reading books, something that I love doing. I loved to visually look at characters and words on a page and hold it in your hand, a book. It's, a physical book, and read it. These are the thoughts that hit my mind initially. This other part of the question is a bit harder to answer. I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that second part of the question really well. We'll come back to it. Let's go on to the third question.
3. Was there a pivotal moment or person that helped you shift your perspective from loss to possibility? 3 of 16.
So was there a pivotal moment or person that changed my life or thought process? I don't know. Right when I awoke at Walter Reed, there were a number of veterans that visited me from the Blinded Veterans Association, a congressionally chartered veteran service organization that's based near Washington, D.C. And they were there to help mentor me and give me advice about what I should pursue for rehab and basically the different things I needed to pursue to reestablish a new normal, to rebuild my life. And I would say those individuals gave me hope and drive to think about the future. They were like in their 70s and 80s and 60s. So I felt if they figured out how to deal with blindness, I was going to figure it out. And that is very much the case since I've lived 17 years blind. Let's listen to this next question.
4. If you could go back and give your past self advice at the very beginning of your journey, what would you say? 4 of 16.
If I could go back and give myself advice, I feel like I've done a pretty good job because of being open and honest with people about how I feel, what I think. I would tell myself that it's going to be difficult and challenging, that it's going to take time and to be patient and not rush trying to learn things and stuff and about blindness, but just to naturally grow and explore. And I think I've done that, but it's definitely what I would tell myself or anybody else. Let's go to the next question.
5. What are some things you wish someone had told you at the beginning of your journey? 5 of 16.
I don't know if I would want someone to tell me too much. People can tell you a lot of things, and it may really just cause anxiety and problems. I'm a strong and firm believer that we just have to adapt and make decisions in the moment about whatever we're facing. And I just approach the challenges that hit me and bother me or push me, however I have to that day, that moment, that time. And it's quite interesting trying to deal with these challenges and live a strong and courageous lifestyle, to be brave and pursue the things you want to do without fear of the unknown, because blindness creates this fear sometimes, especially when you've transitioned from being a sighted person to being blind. And it's challenging. I'd like to listen to that question once more.
5. What are some things you wish someone had told you at the beginning of your journey? 5 of 16.
I think it'd be nice to know that it's going to be challenging to deal with people because of the inability to see their gestures, their mannerisms. That was not first spoken to me, but as I met other blind individuals, it was deep conversation that explained this idea. Let's go to the next question.
6. What were the most unexpected challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? 6 of 16.
The most unexpected challenges I faced. I mean, blindness in general. I had a bad understanding or interpretation of what blindness was. People close their eyes and they try to imagine what it is like to be blind. But, you don't close your eyes and then are given all these skills and systems and techniques to live life blind. You're just closing your eyes without any kind of education about how to live life and navigate in unfamiliar places. So it's very fleeting, this idea of blindness when you're a sighted person trying to imagine it. I feel that blindness has taught me a lot about patience and about how to think through problems and challenges. I want to listen to this question once more.
6. What were the most unexpected challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? 6 of 16.
I'm trying to think of the most unexpected. I think, like I said in my last question, dealing with people, when you're like traveling alone in an unfamiliar place and trying to discern, make sense of whether or not they're someone that you should trust or listen to was kind of an unexpected thing. There's so many unexpected challenges that I faced. I think another thing was what I was saying in my last question, or answer to my last question, was I feel that the lack of mannerisms and gestures and facial expressions really make it challenging sometimes to communicate, to really understand if someone is upset at what you've said to them. Like if I'm speaking to you and I say something that you don't like, I don't get a visual cue that, that person's upset or they're disgusted by what I said or they are saddened, these are the things that I did not expect and I didn't think deeply about and have been challenging to this day. So sometimes just communicating and trying to figure out where you need to go and navigate can be very difficult because people like turn and look and point and do all kinds of gestures and mannerisms without realizing that I'm blind and I can't see and that you're not communicating properly. So that's definitely one of the many challenges I've faced. Let's listen to the next question.
7. What are the most valuable practical skills that someone adjusting to vision loss should focus on first? 7 of 16.
I think one of the key things you should focus on is mobility, orientation and mobility, and using your ears to identify your surroundings and make sense of the world. I call it like an acoustic signature. Everything has an acoustic signature or a sound profile. And you develop this as you grow and learn how to live blind. But it just takes time. And the other key thing is to learn technology. Because in this day and age, in this modern world that we live in, the screen reader, like what you're hearing here, Speak to Me, allows us to be independent. It allows us to use technology to do our banking, to do accounting, to write emails and text messages, and to just live in this world that we know. And so understanding how to use a screen reader like Apple VoiceOver, what I'm using here on this Apple Mac computer system, is so essential and necessary for life. And I think if you're losing your vision, even if you're low vision or visually impaired, I think you should dedicate time in learning and experiencing a screen reader because it can be so helpful, even if you can see a little bit. But that's my opinion, and things are taught very differently in schools. Let's move on to the next question.
8. What resources or organizations would you recommend to someone newly experiencing vision loss? 8 of 16.
Some resources and organizations that I would refer people to would be adaptive athletics and recreation, like sports, because moving is living. I have a mantra: moving is living, living is moving. And it really helps the mind and body if you get the blood flowing and you're breathing and flexing those muscles. You feel good. It's just like going out in the sun and feeling the sun on your skin. That's what I think about exercise and fitness. So pursuing adaptive programs, which exist all over Colorado in these resort towns like Vail, Steamboat Springs, Crested Butte, Telluride, Breckenridge. These are all great places to visit the adaptive programs to get out and to do things, to recreate. Another thing that I would recommend is to pursue blind rehabilitation, a school or a rehab center where they can teach you how to live life more independently, where they can issue you tools or recommend or refer you to different kinds of technology that can make your life easier, like the iPhone or an Apple computer, or, maybe on a PC with JAWS. These are different types of technology and software that can help you live life more independently. Let's move on to the next question.
9. What advice would you give to family members, friends, or caregivers of someone who is losing their sight? 9 of 16.
This is a really important question. Like, what kind of advice or information would I give to a family member or a loved one or friends of someone who's lost their sight or who's going blind? I would remind them to be patient. It's a truly challenging thing to lose a birthright like your sight, but to really lose anything, your ability to walk, move. It takes time to reprogram the brain, to adapt. And you have to give someone that space and encourage them to really try hard to live life, because they can go into bouts of depression and truly hate the idea of living with a problem like blindness. I have my own dark thoughts, no pun intended, but it's difficult, and time heals if you spend the time to try to recover, adapt, and think differently. Let's go on to the next question.
10. How can hospital staff and rehabilitation professionals better support those newly experiencing vision loss? 10 of 16.
So the hospital staff and nurses that attended to me gave me a lot of advice because they spend so much time around the blind. At least that was my experience, because I was a veteran and I went through blind rehab at the VA hospital in Chicago, Edward Hines Jr. VA Hospital. And those nurses and hospital staff were familiar with people who were veterans, and they were working in a center where there were a lot of blind people learning how to live life. So the hospital and the nurses that worked with me would tell me about different veterans who passed through the halls and the program. And that kind of all that kind of deep conversation with those individuals helped me think about my life and my predicament, my loss of sight. I don't know if there's anything else that I would inform them or tell them of. It's just be kind, courteous, and try to, if you're in this kind of same situation where you're learning from others that are blind, pass on the information and give people hope and drive to improve and become a better blind person. Let's go on to the next question.
11. What are some common misconceptions people have about blindness? 11 of 16.
Yeah, these misconceptions are interesting. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is about about guide dogs. So guide dogs, people think that guide dogs just know where to go all the time and will take a blind person wherever, like if I say go to Interstate 70, exit 3 or something, they're going to take me there. But that's not how it works. And there are many other misconceptions. I think the best thing to do is to go online and try to do your research and listen to other blind individuals and make sense of their perspective in life. We're all different people and all have different ways of solving problems and challenges. And I think if you can spend some time watching some videos and reading some articles, you'll learn about the misconceptions that exist. I'm an interesting case. I don't take offense that easily. And so I just try to educate people when they're in my presence and they make a mistake that they're unaware of because they don't work around someone who's blind. And so I don't really retain a lot of these problems or challenges because my focus is to help people better understand, unless I'm in a hurry. And that's often the case, in life. We're in a hurry trying to go somewhere. And so trying to teach everybody everything about blindness when you're in the airport or getting into a taxi or out of a taxi is quite difficult. But I digress. Let's move on to the next question.
12. What do you hope to accomplish with Endeavor to Connect? 12 of 16.
So what do I hope to accomplish with Endeavor to Connect? That's this podcast. Well, to make people more aware, to teach people about blindness, whether they're blind themselves, whether they're newly blind or on this, journey already, or if they're supporting someone with vision loss. I really hope to guide them to answer their questions. And this Endeavor to Connect podcast will be complemented by a webinar that I will start out as a monthly webinar, but it might move to a weekly webinar where I literally am present to answer questions, share experiences, and bring on guests, special guests, who will talk about adaptive tech, access tech, mobility, mindset, and anything else that comes to mind. But this podcast is a way for me to keep an archive or an on-demand file that people can find and listen to. And it's my contribution because of the experiences I've had and the adventures I've been on as a blind person. So that's what I hope for, and I hope you tag along. Let's go on to the next question.
13. How do you see this podcast making an impact on both the blind/visually impaired community and the general public? 13 of 16.
Well, I really think it will have a huge impact on newly blind people. But at the same time, I think it's going to really help the public better understand what it means to be blind and to be adventurous and to pursue challenging things that even sighted people don't, because that's the type of lifestyle I've lived, both sighted and blind. And I think to answer questions about how that's possible, what kind of mindset do you have, what are the systems and techniques that you've built personally to make that happen are the things that I want to share. And so that should benefit people in the public if they're organizing things, if they're trying to build programs for the blind or visually impaired. It will give them a spectrum of things that they can offer to both newly blind people and people that are more adventurous and have been on the journey for a long time and want to push the limits. I think a big part of this show too is to help businesses and organizations who want to employ people who are blind or want to consider those kinds of things. I want to make more people aware of the possibilities of how technical and experienced and skilled someone with blindness can be. We may not be the fastest always because we're operating in a different way with our ears and our other senses, but we're still very capable of accomplishing great things and being a very resourceful and ultimately an asset for a company or an organization. So that's what I hope this podcast, among many other things, will do for the public and for blind and low vision or visually impaired people. Let's move on to the next question.
14. What kind of stories do you hope to tell, and what message do you want listeners to take away? 14 of 16.
Well, I might have answered some of these questions already. I hope to have special guests on so they can talk about either the technology they sell, if they're a manufacturer, if they're a rehab counselor or a rehabilitation specialist. They can talk about the experiences they've had with other blind individuals. I hope to talk to just the wide spectrum of people that live alongside the blind and visually impaired. And that could be in the hospitals, could be in educational settings, it could be in recreation and sports, just anything. There's so many different types of people that I've come across who have given me a lot of wisdom and information that have helped me along my journey. So like I've said already, it's going to be a wide spectrum podcast covering many things. And who knows, I might learn something new myself about my challenge and about blindness. Let's go to the next question.
15. If someone listening today is struggling with vision loss, what is one message you want them to hear? 15 of 16.
I would like to tell people, if they're struggling with blindness or visual impairment, that you're not alone. There are so many other people with multiple injuries like myself. I have not mentioned it till just now, but I have a hand disability. It's like almost my left hand is not useful at all. I have barely any feeling or sensitivity in it. I can't feel my fingers, and I have a lot of neuropathy and pain. But there are people missing both their arms and hands that are blind and missing their legs. I have a friend, Matthew Bradford. He was a Marine, or is still a Marine, as they say. He lost both his legs and his sight. You're not alone. You may feel alone because blindness makes you feel this way. And I awoke in a hospital with blind people at my side. And those were the first true relationships and blind people I really met in my entire life, up until that point, and that everything before that, I was living my life at 150 miles an hour, and I was kind of I didn't pay attention to the disability community. So it's really, really important to just face the challenges you have every day and make the best decisions you can, and look for advice and ask questions and be honest about how you feel with people. Don't be afraid to share your story, to share your dreams and goals with people, because if you don't, they will not know how to help you. This goes for everybody, not just someone who's blind. And if you do that, and because that is what I've done my entire life now as a blind person, there's so many people that will help you accomplish your goals. But you have to stay positive and just reward yourself and think highly of the things that the challenges you overcome. That's easily said. It's a whole different thing when you have to live it. But I hope that you will try, and I hope that you will encourage your loved one, if they are losing their sight, that there's still amazing and great things ahead. You just have to be open to it.
16. How can listeners get involved or share their own experiences with Endeavor to Connect? 16 of 16.
Well, if you want to get involved with Endeavor to Connect, you can visit blindendeavors.org, or you can write me, steve@blindendeavors.org, and I will respond to you personally. Hopefully we can bring you on the show and give you the opportunity to share your story, or share a product, or some sort of technique or system that will help others who are blind. But I think this was the last question. And let me just double check. I'm going to hit VO right arrow.
End of list.
End of list. So as you were listening, I was navigating with a computer keyboard that's sitting in front of me. I'm just pressing specific keyboard commands to navigate the screen. And this is a HTML document, like a file I created that has these questions. And I was just moving one by one through them and recording it into the computer alongside my voice. But I really hope that I answered the questions as best as I could, and that you've gained something from this experience. I could go back and do all these questions again, go through them and answer them with more information, and maybe I will. And hopefully, I know I will, I should say. I will with people who come here on the show and share their story, or join me on the webinar and ask questions about blindness and about what it means to pursue some of the things I've been involved with as a blind person, or just how I made decisions about things in my life. And I hope that you'll come and join us. The webinar is going to be called Redefining Vision. And I will be hosting it, but like I said, I'll bring on guests to share their stories and to share their information that they want to pass along to the public and to the blind, visually impaired community. So I want to thank you all again for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you visit the webpage. And if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Thank you very much, and take care.
Every voice has a story. Every sound carries emotion. At B360 Productions, we don't just edit audio, we shape experiences.
A podcaster's voice, crystal clear.
An author's words brought to life.
A business's message delivered with impact.
Your sound matters. Let's create something unforgettable together. Visit b360productions.com and let's make your project exceptional.
An educator's lesson, engaging and immersive for every student.
B360 Productions. Crafted with precision, delivered with passion.